This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social. Delighted to be joined by CEO of Showtime, Stephen Espinoza. We're here at Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury press conference in London. How are you, Stephen?
I'm great. Happy to be here in London again.
I just mentioned to you off camera, the last time I saw you was Mayweather-McGregor London tour. You're looking a little bit more sprightly than you were then.
That was an exhausting but exhilarating experience, yeah. But we have a similar character here in Tyson Fury. There's only one Conor McGregor, but there's only one Tyson Fury. I wouldn't want to be caught in a plane sitting between the two of them on a long transatlantic flight.
Tell me a little bit about this fight. As I just mentioned, the last time I saw you was Mayweather-McGregor. You've been involved in some of the biggest fights on either side of the pond. How big is this fight, Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury?
I think it's huge. It's arguably the most important and most significant, the biggest heavyweight fight since in probably at least 2 decades, or nearly 2 decades. You'd have to go back to Lewis versus Tyson, Lewis Klitschko, both nearly 20 years ago to have a fight in the U.S. of this significance, and I think the U.S. market is going to respond accordingly. Deontay has made a lot of progress in terms of his visibility. The hardcore fans in the U.S. know Tyson Fury, but I think with his personality, his wit, and just his charisma, he's going to make a lot of fans very quickly. So, as a TV executive, it's a we're blessed. We're fortunate to have two guys as charismatic and as interesting as these two guys are.
Tell me about the timeline of this fight being made. Obviously, a lot of this year has been taken up with Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder negotiations. When did Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder first become a realistic proposition?
I'd say the discussions really started around July. By July, it was fairly clear that Wilder versus Joshua was not going to happen, and the conversations became in earnest. And then once Tyson finished his fight on October 18th, and he looked pretty much like the old Tyson, at least pretty close. He was moving, he was slick, he was back in a good physical condition. Then things started moving very, very quickly. So compared to some of the more long drawn out negotiations I participated in, this one was a breeze. It was really done in probably a period of 6 or 7 weeks.
You mentioned the long drawn out negotiations. Obviously, you've got Joshua Wilder, Mayweather-Pacquiao is also something that you were involved with. What is it about these fights that seemingly go on forever when it comes to negotiations?
It's a good question. I wish I knew exactly, because then it'd be easy to counteract it. But I think part of it is, in the Mayweather-Pacquiao, for example, I think there was a lot of distrust. There was a lot of misinformation. There was a lot of question about whether either side really wanted the fight. And I think that was part of the problem, maybe still is part of the problem in the Joshua discussions. There is a lot of doubt about whether that's a fight that both sides want immediately. But I'm firmly of the belief that when both fighters genuinely want a fight, and certainly when you have two guys who are as knowledgeable and experienced in the sport as Wilder and Fury are, then that fight is very likely to happen. Wilder, is his own boss. Fury is very much his own man. If they say make the fight happen, the fight will happen. So I think it's firmly in sort of the camp of the fighters to force a fight to happen if necessary. And here you had two guys who really wanted the fight to happen, and here we are.
Staying with Joshua and Wilder, forgive me, I know this is not the fight that's indeed happening. A lot's been made about the fight being signed without a date, without a venue. I know that there was some voices from certainly Team Joshua's side of the fight that was a stumbling block of not having the Joshua Wilder fight. Yet this fight was announced with no date, no venue. What's the difference there?
That's one of the points of confusion, because having seen the written offer to the Joshua side, there were dates and venues in there. So I'm not sure where the confusion lay in that point. Now, both offers, in terms of the paperwork, had similar language. There was a window of dates. In this fight in particular, the early drafts of the contract said November or December, and they limited it to one of 2 or 3 venues, New York, Las Vegas, or LA. which isn't unusual because you have a timetable and you have limited the venues. What is a little bit strange is sometimes if you get a contract without any dates in it whatsoever, which at least from the offers that I saw from the Wilder side was not the case for the Joshua negotiation.
But that wasn't the case in this particular fight, Wilder versus Fury. That had dates, that had venues. It was just a matter of finalising which was which.
Actually, both were similar. The Wilder offer that I said had a window in it of certain dates, certain months, much like this fight in particular. So, I know there are other things that were, I believe, affecting the Joshua negotiation, whether there was, the Dazn factor and the desire to be, to use him to launch that. There are some questions about whether the management team or the training team of Joshua wanted the fight this quickly. He's doing phenomenal business here in the UK, and I understand, that his career is going to go on. And I do believe in the near future, at this point, I think before the end of 2019, that we will see a Wilder versus Joshua fight.
You've actually stepped on my next question there, Stephen. A bit of journalistic instinct about you. Dazn, how big of a factor was that in blocking the Joshua Wilder fight, in your opinion?
It's a good question. It's purely speculation from my part. Really, the only one who knows the answer to that question is Eddie Hearn. Eddie has got two big initiatives. One is the Joshua career, and the other is the Dazn business. Sometimes those have similar objectives, and sometimes they have different objectives. In this particular case, I believe it was important for Dazn to have Joshua. They were aggressive with their bid, as were we. But ultimately, since I'm not really privy to the conversations, that Eddie had, I'm just speculating in terms of the final decision.
Final question on Joshua Wilder. If you could you explain to me the term proof of funds?
It means different things to different people. It can mean essentially something as clear as a letter of credit. It can be a bank statement saying here are the funds. It can be a letter. It can be a guarantee from another corporation. But essentially, it's some mechanism for demonstrating that the funds are available and are real.
Just finally, because we're about to be moved, the funds were in place from Showtime for a Joshua Wilder fight.
The funds were in place. There were various means that were offered to guarantee it or to prove it. Ultimately, those were never really followed up on. There were multiple offers of proof or requests. Tell us how you would like it proved, and they were never taken up.